Introduction. Wings first appeared on Earth far back in the mists of time. Since then, they've proved to be very useful indeed. Insects, pterosaurs, birds, and bats all swooped through the skies millions of years before people figured out how to use wings. In fact, people dreamed about flying and made up stories about it long before they discovered how to do it. As well as our feathered, furry, and six-legged flying friends, you'll find out about winged horses, unicorns, and dragons, biplanes, helicopters, and solar-powered planes, and courageous flying monks. So clamber into the cockpit of your supersonic plane or strap on a wingsuit and climb a mountain if you'd rather, and come for a fascinating flight. It's time to discover the wonder of wings. How wings work. Birds and bats use their strong muscles to flap their wings, pushing them forward through the air. As the animals move along at high speed, the air moving above and below the wings creates an upward force called lift. The lift force pushes the animals up and keeps them in the air. Airplane wings work in the same way, but airplanes have propellers or jet engines that push them forward through the air instead of muscles. Flying insects. Hundreds of millions of years ago, insects were the first creatures ever to fly on planet Earth. Today, there are more insects than any other type of creature in the world, around 900,000 different kinds that we know of. Scientists think there are about 1 billion insects for every human. Insects fly at different speeds. The fastest are dragonflies, which can zip along at more than 30 miles per hour, 50 kilometers per hour. Flies are slower, but they're aerial acrobats. They can hover and fly backwards and sideways like helicopters. Lots of insects make a buzzing sound because their wing beats make the air around them vibrate. Insect wings. Insects are animals with 2 feelers or antennae, 6 legs, and a body made up of 3 parts: head, thorax, and abdomen. Not all of them can fly. Most flying insects have 2 sets of wings, but some, including flies, have only 1 set. Flies often have rods on the sides of their bodies that help keep them steady as they fly, instead of a second set of wings. Butterflies. These gorgeous creatures have some of the world's most beautiful wings. The biggest butterfly, and perhaps the most gorgeous of all, is Queen Alexandra's bird-wing butterfly. Butterflies are found in most parts of the world, but all the ones you can see here are from tropical rainforests. Butterflies smell with their antennae and taste with their feet as well as with their mouths. A butterfly's mouth is a long straw-like proboscis which uncurls to suck up nectar or juice from plants. Butterfly magic. Butterflies attach their eggs to leaves with a gluey substance. Each egg hatches into a caterpillar, which grows and grows, and then turns into a pupa with a hard case around it called a chrysalis. In one of the natural world's most spectacular magic tricks, the pupa changes inside the chrysalis, growing wings and emerging as an adult butterfly. Flying reptiles. Flying reptiles swooped across prehistoric skies in the age of the dinosaurs millions of years before birds and bats. They were the biggest flying creatures in the history of the world. Pterosaur wings. Pterosaurs had 3 small fingers and an enormously long 4th finger, which supported the wing. The wing was a membrane made up of 3 layers that attached to the hind leg. It's thought that pterosaurs launched themselves into the air in a giant leap from a standing start. The first birds. Birds weren't the first things to fly, but once they got going, they became really good at it. They've been flapping around for many millions of years. Lots of birds. Today, there are thousands of different kinds of birds. All of them have feathers, but their wings are different shapes to suit how they fly. Small woodland birds fly between trees, so they need to swerve around and to stop and take off quickly. Their stubby, broad wings are the best shape for that kind of skillful flying. Birds that make long journeys need wings to help them go fast through the air. Ducks and swallows have these high-speed wings, which are long and slightly bent. Seabirds, such as seagulls, have long, narrow wings to help them glide along. They ride the winds effortlessly with their wings outstretched. Eagles and other birds of prey need to soar high above the ground. To help them do this, they have long, wide wings tipped with feathers that are separated, like fingers. 3 feathers. Birds have long, stiff wing feathers to help them fly, and tail feathers help them steer in the sky. Wing feathers are pointed, and tail feathers are more rounded on the tip. Birds also have small, fluffy body feathers to help keep them warm. If you look at the picture, the white feather is the rounded tail feather, the blue feather is the pointed wing feather, and the red feather is the downy body feather. What kind of feathers do you see on the birds? Bats. These furry, leathery winged creatures are the world's only flying mammals and some of its most amazing animals. There are over 1,200 different kinds of bats. That's nearly 1/5 of the world's species of mammal. I'm just nuts about fruit. Most of the world's bats swoop around eating insects at night. By day, they roost in dark, out-of-the-way places, such as inside caves and under bridges. This means they keep away from daytime predators and take advantage of tasty nighttime insects. Bat wings. A bat's wing is like a human arm and hand with skin stretched between the bones. The part that would be a thumb on a human hand is a little claw sticking out of the bat's wing so it can crawl and climb. Magical wings. Plenty of real animals have wings, but there are stories of magical winged creatures, including flying horses and firebirds. On this page, you'll see the stories of the phoenix, Chinese dragons, Pegasus, griffins, and flying unicorns called alicorns. The Flight of Icarus. A long time before there were flying machines or even kites, people dreamed of flying and made up stories about it. The story of Icarus was first told more than 2,000 years ago in ancient Greece. If you have time, spend some time reading the story of Icarus now. People take off. People have been fascinated by flight for thousands of years. After all, birds make it look so easy. Before the invention of planes, we tried all sorts of ways to get airborne. Like Icarus in the Greek myth, some people made wings like birds' wings, complete with feathers, attached them to their arms, and jumped off tall buildings. The results were short, fast, and often painful. One of the flyers was a monk named Aylmer of Malmesbury in the 11th century. You can do it, Aylmer! This might seem nuts to you, but you've seen airplanes. I've only seen birds and bats and insects. And it's not so different from modern wingsuits. In China, people had been flying kites since around 400 BC, and people tried to fly using kites for centuries afterwards. Some were successful, but gliders proved much better. Find out more about them on the next page. Kites were also used to test the strength of the wind, send messages, and measure distances. And just for fun. People managed to get properly airborne for the first time in 1783 when the first hot air balloon went up. But it took a bit longer for flying machines with wings. Gliders. Gliders were the first aircraft that weren't lighter than air, like balloons. Now people really were flying. And you can read the page and learn about the inventor George Cayley and Otto Lilienthal, who built gliders in the 1880s. Modern hang gliders are more like Otto Leonthal's gliders, a big wing made out of a simple frame covered in fabric. The pilot hangs in a harness underneath the wing and, like Leonthal, runs downhill into the wind to launch, then glides on warm air currents. Today's gliders don't look much like Cayley's or Leonthal's, but they can stay in the air for hours rather than a few minutes. They have to be towed by a plane to get airborne or hoisted up on a long cable attached to a car or a winch. Flying machines. The Wright brothers are among the most famous people in the history of the world because of their brilliant winged invention. You can read about Wilbur and Orville Wright here. Let's talk about plane wings. Plane wings. A plane's wings are shaped so that the air rushing around them pushes them upward into the sky. The Wright Flyer and other early planes were biplanes with two sets of wings. These gave the planes a big wing area, useful because early engines weren't very powerful, and a sturdy structure. From biplanes to supersonic planes. After Wilbur and Orville Wright's biplane took off, it was quite a short flight to today's supersonic computerized aircraft. More than 100,000 flights take off every day. We need to invent an environmentally friendly plane. Most modern passenger and cargo planes are controlled by onboard computers called autopilot. The real pilot is still needed for takeoff and landing, though, and in case something goes wrong. Planes of the future. We rely on planes to transport all sorts of things, from vacationers to frozen fish. But most planes need aviation fuel to fly, which contributes to pollution and global warming. We need to find environmentally friendly ways to fly. Solar-powered planes use the sun to charge their batteries. In 2016, Bertrand Piccard and Andre Borschberg completed the first around-the-world flight using solar power in their plane Solar Impulse 2. Planes that flap. In the future, planes might be shaped differently from today's planes so that they travel faster and more smoothly through the air. For example, Delta wing planes are shaped like a giant triangle. The Albatross 1, in development by Airbus in the UK, has wings that can flap. Helicopters. Helicopter wings are different from airplane wings, bird wings, and bat wings. These spinning rotary wings make helicopters amazing aerial acrobats. The rotary wings mean that helicopters are extra clever. They can fly and land straight up or down, hover, fly backwards and sideways as well as forwards, and they don't need a runway. Most modern helicopters have a big main rotor and a smaller one at the back. This type of helicopter was designed by Igor Sikorsky and flew for the first time in 1939. They're not easy to fly. Those wings are weird. I tilt the main rotor blades to go forward and backwards and tilt and change the speed of the back rotor to go left or right. Helicopters can find and pick up people in disaster zones, move army troops and supplies, and even herd cattle. They're especially good at putting out fires because the downward rush of air from the rotor blades helps direct the water they release. Wings in space. Space rockets zoom out of the Earth's atmosphere without wings, but the world's first reusable spacecraft had wings so that it could fly back to Earth at supersonic speeds. Wings that don't fly. Some birds have wings but can't fly at all. Here are some of our flightless feathery friends. Ostriches are the world's biggest birds. We can be fierce and have been known to kill lions. To make up for being too big and heavy to fly, ostriches can sprint on land at 45 miles per hour or 70 kilometers per hour. They use their wings to slow down or to help turn corners at high speed. Kiwis are in the same family group as ostriches, but we're only chicken-sized. Kakapoos and kiwis are nocturnal flightless birds that live in the forests of New Zealand. Kiwis' wings are only about 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters long, and are completely hidden underneath the bird's feathers. Kakapoos are a type of parrot. They can flap their wings, but they can't fly. There aren't very many kakapoos left since predators such as cats were brought to New Zealand. Penguins use their wings to propel them through water. The fastest swimming penguin is the gentoo, which speeds along at up to 22 miles per hour or 35 kilometers per hour. Sometimes gentoo penguins dive out of the water and whiz through the air, so we're sort of flying. Flying without wings. Some things can fly, or at least seem to fly, without any wings at all. Take a look at the pictures. What do you notice that seems to be flying without wings? How is that possible? Read about the ones that you are most interested in. Wandering albatross wings. The wandering albatross has the most impressive wingspan of any bird in the world. These magnificent flyers can measure more than 10 feet, 3 meters, from wingtip to wingtip. These huge birds spend most of their time soaring over the sea on the wind, seldom coming down to land. They've been recorded traveling an astonishing 75,000 miles, 120,000 kilometers, in 1 year as they fly around the Southern Ocean. Wandering albatross glide through the sky on air currents. They angle their huge wings into the wind to push them higher and higher, then swoop back down towards the ocean. They rarely have to flap their wings. Aircraft engineers have been studying how albatrosses fly. These extraordinary birds are experts at energy-efficient flying and could help make planes more efficient too. All sorts of birds. There are at least 10,000 different kinds of birds in the world, and there might be many more than that. They come in all sorts of colors, shapes, and sizes. Here are just a few of the world's most amazing birds. Check out the birds and check out the timeline. What are your favorite things with wings?